Welcome, friends, to Utah Stories. So today on the program, we are tipping some sacred cows, I suppose. We have gotten some backlash for our current issue of Utah Stories magazine. It's called Utah's Identity Crisis. In the introduction, I talk about how we have a bit of an identity crisis here in Utah because you see that the LDS Church was fined $5 million by the SEC. That could have just been an accounting error, maybe a rounding error. When you have $100 billion in your bank account, you can make errors, and that's basically what the church is claiming, what they told KSL News, that's the only news outlet. They've commented on that too. But then you also have problems with a lot of cronyism and what I call honest graft in Utah, which is not blatant corruption, but you have, for example, the LDS church members have what I call a good old boys club. And if you're part of that club, you can get incredible positions within the government, and you can exploit those positions for your development projects or, say, your PR firm. And if you look at the case of Kerry Gibson, who worked at the Department of Agriculture, he had a job running the department right when medical cannabis was announced. His department, his PR firm, began getting some really great contracts with people who wanted medical cannabis licenses. You could say that that's honest because they're using his PR services, but does that have anything to do with him being the one who decides who gets those licenses? I kind of doubt it. It's kind of like Joe Biden's son doing little pictures and then getting paid $1 million for those pictures from the Chinese government. You can't say it's like blatantly dishonest, but it's definitely not, not corrupt, basically. So I wrote that in the magazine, how that happens a lot, this crony capitalism. And I got some blowback, and I'm always open to negative comments, even more than positive comments. I've always loved reading what people are thinking, because I'm sure when we get a negative comment, a lot of people are thinking that. And the question is, am I an anti-Mormon because I'm criticizing the church? And the answer is no. I have half of my family is Mormon. Most of my ancestors were Mormon pioneers. And I think back about them a lot because they came over here across the plains. They took a huge gamble with their lives and their families. A lot of people died trying to make that journey across the plains. And they became Mormons, and they lived their lives as Mormons, and my grandparents were Mormons. They're great people. Many of our advertisers are Mormons. They know that I am not anti-Mormon. But a lot of readers or people who just flip through the magazine, they're trying to figure out, what's this magazine all about? And they might assume that this is like anti-Mormon propaganda or left-wing propaganda or right-wing propaganda. What we're really trying to derive at is the truth and to report the truth and the facts. And when we talk about the Mormon Church, I only want to stay focused on the facts. But here's what Mrs. Melanie Jackson said. She wrote, "I just saw an article written by Richard Marcosian called Utah's Identity Crisis in a magazine. I had to laugh because it was a horrible piece, and he thinks he's a journalist. The article goes on and whining about not getting everything practically free, and of course plays the victim like so many do today. He's blaming the LDS Church for people like him needing things that most people have to work hard for. Then at the end, he proclaims that the LGBTQ community is growing into a new creature. He compares it to a dragon and hopes the church doesn't get burned when they try to ride the dragon. Ha ha ha. But no, most of the population in Utah does not share your views, and this is an embarrassment for the rest of us who live here, slamming the church, and supposedly, does that make you intelligent? Ha ha ha, it did the opposite." Anyway, there's more to it. You can get on our website or Instagram page and read the whole thing. But I kind of wonder, where are you getting your facts from? Because it's not from the story we produced. I said, where do you get the idea that we don't believe in working hard? We profile independent business owners who are working their butts off every issue of the magazine. We praise the virtues of hard work constantly in the magazine. And then where do we slam the church? I'm not slamming the church at all. I'm just stating a fact. They were fined by the SEC for $5 million for hiding money. They weren't laundering money. It wasn't a huge operation where they're deliberately trying to swindle the U.S. government, but they were in fact hiding money, and they got busted for it. So I just wonder, why should there be any institution on earth that is beyond reproach or beyond reporting about, especially here in Utah? I think every single institution, even if you go back to the Catholic Church and the Protestant Reformation, you should be criticizing. You should be looking for the faults, because almost every single institution eventually ends up with degrees of corruption. And if you're not pointing those out, if you're not talking about those things and reporting on them, certainly they're going to get worse. So all of my LDS friends who might be watching or listening, I absolutely appreciate your point of view and who you are, but by no means is the church beyond reproach. And I think that goes for not only the LDS church, but every single church that ever existed. And as far as hard work goes, I think about my Mormon pioneer ancestors, especially one of two of my ancestors were non-Mormon and were Armenian immigrants. They fled here from the Armenian genocide, where their entire families were massacred by the Young Turks, by an uprising among the Armenian government at the time that just decided in northern Syria and Armenia and parts of I believe Lebanon to let's just kill off all the Armenians. And that's what brought those ancestors here to America, where they were able to find and build this incredible life and find this amazing valley and place receptive to immigrants and refugees from a foreign country. And they were so appreciative their whole life of America and the American dream. And the Armenian Holocaust is actually being the 108th anniversary is being celebrated just next week, and you can check out information about that. But I'm so grateful to live in a country where your hard work can actually pay off and you won't get slaughtered for your beliefs. I think everybody's entitled to have their beliefs, and our religious institutions are very important. And so I appreciate the comment, though, Melanie. I actually really want to know what people are thinking who read our articles. So I wanted to read a couple more comments if we got time. We've got a comment on the homeless industrial complex. So we did a report about how the homeless, I'll say, people who are helping the homeless. There's all these non-government entities that are in business to help the homeless. How we know that we're spending about $200 to $300 million a year in Utah for our homeless community. And if you take that money and you divide it by how many homeless individuals there are, which is about 6,000 to 7,000, then that's about $85,000 per homeless individual that is going into the system. And then my question is, how much actually flows back out to the homeless people? And you talk to the homeless people, and they're a lot of them are sleeping outside still. A lot of them are getting their things confiscated by the police. They're getting moved around all the time. And I asked, so how much is actually going to them? It's not going to them. It's going to the administrators. And there's a lot of administrators getting huge salaries. And so the problem is there's not a system of examining what is the return on investment per dollar spent. What are we actually getting back, or what is the homeless community getting back for all the money we're putting into the system? And so we reported on that, and a woman by the name of Daniel On, who was running for Salt Lake City District Attorney, was on to talk about that. And what this reader said was, what BS? Oh, we all want a return on investment, but never get it. But we're so unbelievably, incredibly holy. We'll shell out another $300 million just to signal our virtue. Somebody is making bank. This is an auditor deciding Satan is being too holy. Obviously, the Untermenschen need more torture. I think that means underman in German. We need a torture committee to monitor proper pain level. More pain for the poor, more pain for the pain. It's kind of a weird comment, but the reason I read it is because I just wonder, as a person where a lot of my family members were former LDS members, and there's $100 billion in a bank account right now, what if they just took one of that $100 billion and spent it on a a operation like we find in San Antonio called the Center for Hope and Recovery. I believe that's what it was called. Correct. I know I'm probably getting it wrong, but basically a campus where people can get either recovery and addiction support, mental health support, or job and vocational services, like a homeless industrial campus where people can get housing and the support they need. I bet that would cost $1 billion to build that. The church has $100 billion in their bank account. Why not build something like that? Why be spending all this money on administrators when we could be spending this money on people who are actually helping the homeless get back on their feet, helping them get back into jobs, helping them get psychiatric services and addiction recovery services? It just seems like a huge waste of money. And I wish that members of the church, as well as ex-Mormons like myself, would stand up and say, there's all this money sitting there. Why not put it to use in human capital? Why put it in the stock market? Why not invest in people again? And so that's something that I thought about for a while. And supposedly this could happen. We had on the program somebody from the Pioneer Park Coalition, James Buchanan, and he said they're looking at that model from San Antonio. They're really considering it. I think we just need to do it. I think our homeless population keeps growing and growing. The problem's only getting worse. Why not use Utah as the kind of beacon for how it should be done in a major city, in a state? And I think that could be an incredible way to spend $1 out of $100 billion that the church has in their account right now. And with that, we're having on the program today, when we get back, Daniel from Salsa del Diablo. If you haven't tried Salsa del Diablo, it is without a doubt some of the best salsa I've ever had. He built this company up from making his recipes. I think they were your mom's recipes, right? Your own recipes, but sharing with friends and sharing with family. And he was working in the back of REI, and one of our employees worked with him. And he just had these incredible recipes, and people were like, hey, man, you should start your own business. And for a long time, he's like, no, I just like making it on my own. And then eventually he just decided to take the plunge. And it's a really cool story. We're going to share that story with you. And then after Daniel, coming on the program is Brian McInerney, who is a Utah State hydrologist. He's like one of the foremost experts on snowpack and runoff and flooding. And if you want some real insight into the potential floods that are to come, and they're almost certain to be some big floods happening, you're going to want to stay tuned and listen to that as well. And with that, be sure to check out our new issue of Utah Stories magazine. Thank you so much for our many subscribers who have decided to fork out $3 a month to have this delivered right to your home. I really appreciate you doing that. And if you want to join the folks who are doing that, go out to utahstories.com, scroll down and hit that subscribe button. And only $3 a month, you can get it delivered right to your home. At the top there. And we'll be right back in just a few moments, and we'll be talking to Daniel from Salsa del Diablo. Stay tuned.